Absolutely.
Ben, I want to turn this morning to our friend, and I say that with air quotes, Tucker Carlson, who
Mm.
obviously has gone to a new low with his entertainment commentary on Fox News. Take a listen.
Yeah, so the one thing you can't do is expel the junkies, not the homeless. Homeless makes it sound like some sort of protected class of protesters. No, they're junkies. They're people shooting up, breaking into cars to support their habit, selling themselves, pimping out women. They're junkies, okay? And they're on your kid's school lawn. Well, we can't intervene in that because it's always been that way. Just lower expectations, Karen. In New York City, police have just been ordered not to intervene when they see junkies shooting up on the sidewalk or in a park. Can't get in the way, and you shouldn't, because we've always had junkies in our park. Sam Adams was actually smoking meth on the Boston Common once upon a time. In Washington, D.C., the Metro just basically shut down and pulled 60% of its train cars from service. So commuters, the ones who pay for it, are just have to find another way to get to work because the train service isn't working anymore. Just lower your expectations. In fact, they're lucky. In Philadelphia last week, several people on a train, they got on the train and then they got to watch as a man raped a woman on the train for minutes. Witnesses describe what they saw to Fox 29 in Philadelphia.
I think we also have to lower our standards of our news anchors who clearly don't tell us the facts. They just tell us our opinions these days.
Georgia, I try to follow. Listen, I try to do my due diligence of following someone's argument through the conclusion. And that was the most non sequitur laden piece of sophistry that I have ever experienced in real time. I mean, he was all over the place, all for the sake of trying to give something for his audience to be upset about. And the policy that he's talking about is a policy for the police not to intervene with the homeless in a particular fashion in New York, but in order to remove the humanity. He could not allow these people to be described as homeless, so he recategorized them as junkies. And then he executed his sophistry in a magnificent way, and that's why he makes $7 million a year doing the bidding of the oligarchs.
Yeah, I mean, he totally dehumanized folks who are facing homelessness. And Ben, over the last 2 years, I've spent a ton of time being out in homeless encampments, speaking to the residents that live there. And, they deserve dignity and respect just like anyone else. And yeah, some of them that I met, they do have an addiction and they're struggling with that. But to be honest with you, there were a number of individuals who I met who legitimately lost their job in the pandemic and don't have any other option, can't get hired. Maybe they have a criminal background. Maybe they don't. But there was a number of individuals who I spoke to who also had mental health issues, who weren't junkies at all, who didn't have a criminal background, but had some type of mental health disorder that was preventing them from keeping a job. And so, it's ignorant and it's foolish, but it's important that we continue to listen to the other side, to people's perspectives, to understand where they're coming from. And I like to follow along as well, because sometimes you can see the other side, somebody else's perspective, right? You can understand where they're coming from. But in this case, if you know anyone who has an addiction, that by itself is an illness, and so why are we dehumanizing and criminalizing people who clearly need help and in some cases intervention?
Because without a villain, conservatives have nothing. Literally. They have no policy. They have no plan. They have no vision for the future. They have nothing but scare tactics and boogeymen. And if there's at any point in this country's history or future that we show empathy to a group, well, then that presents an opportunity for people like Tucker Carlson to make real money because they turn those marginalized people. I don't get it. I honestly don't get it, Georgia. Of all the people, they pick on the least of these, the homeless, the most marginalized, and they try to make them to be out a villain. Oh, Tucker Carlson, we see just how real mediocre you are.
And I mean, and what do you want? Do you want them to be locked up? You want them to go to jail? And what does that solve? Criminalizing people who are homeless, who are suffering with drug addictions. At a young age, I traveled to Amsterdam. And it was fascinating to me that they have a government system that doesn't criminalize drug use, that doesn't criminalize even prostitution. And so when you live in a society that has a different legal structure and doesn't criminalize these things, then what do you say about the people who do have an addiction? What do you say about the people who choose to make money in a way that you don't agree with when it's legal? And so, I don't know exactly what the answer is, but I know that like locking people up and throwing away the key doesn't solve anything. It doesn't help this population of people who are struggling with their own issues. And a lot of people argue that there's so many vacant buildings that why can't there be a space designated for the people who don't have anywhere to go? Why can't there be more regulations? Why can't there be more resources? We've seen organizations go down to some of these encampments for people who do have drug addictions. And instead of criminalizing them and making fun of them, they offer them clean needles, not to be an enabler, but if they're going to do it, provide resources so they can do it safely. Absolutely. And so it's frustrating to see an attack on a marginalized, vulnerable population that is not in a position to defend themselves and who desperately needs help and resources.